Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our meeting for June the 6th, 2023. Before we begin, I just want to let everybody know that we are using a new voting system tonight. So votes will be displayed on the screens in council chambers and online, and there will be no more hand voting. So please bear with us as we may have some technical difficulties, as this is our first meeting doing so, and we only just tried it out about 15 minutes ago. So with that, I will call this meeting to order. Can I get a motion, please, that the agenda for the June 6, 2023 regular meeting of council be adopted with the addition of the item transportation study update and council engagement immediately following the delegations, and the addition of closed session item M2, personnel, FOIP section 17 and 24. Councillor Chenard, would you like to make that motion?
Yes, I'll move with the additions.
Thank you. And do we have any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, I will call the question. Please vote now. And that is unanimous and approved. Can I get a motion, please, that the minutes of the May 16th, 2023 regular meeting of council be adopted as presented? Go ahead, Councillor Moore.
I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, I will call the question. Please vote now. And that motion is carried. We have no public hearings, but we do have some delegations this evening. First up, we have the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, presented by Staff Sergeant Christian Delisle, Detachment Commander, and our Sergeant is here as well, Mr. Luke Milbury. So come on up.
Good evening, Council. Good evening, Mayors. Thank you for having us tonight. Yes, we are here to present our annual report, statistics and information about the detachment for the fiscal year 2022-2023. I have with me, like you mentioned, Sergeant Luke Milbury. He's our operation NCO of the detachment. So if there's any questions relating to operations, Luke is here as well to answer them. So without further delay, we'll start. Basically, our sorry, there you go. Our presentation tonight will be we will be talking about resources, staffing levels at the detachment, our crime statistics for 2022, the annual performance plan priorities that we had for that time period, the budget, and the annual performance plans that we have for this fiscal year, 2023-2024, and we'll follow up with questions. So resources staffing at the Edson detachment, right now we're in a good position. The town of Edson supplies 17 positions. They're all staffed. We have one person that is on light duties. Beside that, we're fully staffed. We are expecting 2 senior constable to be transferred this year. So that will create a bit of a vacancy for a period amount of time, although staffing is working with us to fill those as soon as possible. We also have support staff at the detachment, 6.5 position. The town of Edson is supplying 4.5 of those. We have 1 vacancy. That position is right now in the staffing process. I think we're about midway there. The town is basically looking after that process since it's a municipal employee position. Now, if we move on to our crime statistics. So in 2022, the RCMP in Edson responded to 5,769 calls for service. 3,491 were in the town of Edson within the boundaries of the municipality. So just to give you a quick overview, so if we look at persons crime, compared to 2021, we saw a 4% decrease. If we look back about 5 years, we see a decrease of 21% compared to like 2018. Property crime, 17% decrease, 37% decrease if we look back 5 years ago. And then other criminal code, we have an increase of 63% compared to last year. We'll talk about this when we get there. But if we look at the statistics, for 5 years ago, we are lower by 21%. This is the table that we're talking about. We can see different categories of crime. So for the majority, there are on the negative. We do see an increase with sexual assaults and sexual offenses, which I will talk about shortly, as well with assaults. Even though they're a little lower, it's still a high number. I like to also mention a few things about this one. So if we break it down a little bit more here, so when we talk sexual assaults, looking at the files that we received last year, 25% of the files, either sexual assault or a sexual nature, were historical. So I always like to see that number to be as high as possible. That means that the victims are more comfortable to come forward. So we have 25% of those. 15% were family related, of any kind, but family related. 25% of the sexual files that we got were friends/acquaintance related. Could be through work environment and whatnot, but people knew each other. And then something very interesting, while I was doing the statistics, 14% of the file, the aggressor and the victims are both under the age of 18. So it kind of raised an eyebrow on that one. So I was like, oh, that's interesting, but it is the files that we received. In terms of assault, 50% are family related. And I want to make clear here, assaults, we have like a vast variety of different calls for service that qualify for assaults. It goes from the little push to a punch in the face. So not everything is of extreme violence, but an assault is an assault, and 50% of our calls are due to family conflict. Now, if we move to property crime, we have the property crime here. Sorry about that. Here you go. Okay. Break and enters. It's sorry, we're skipping a slide here. My apologies. I just can't get on it. There you go. Thank you very much. So property crimes, like I mentioned earlier, we saw a decrease of 17% with last year. Some of the numbers that I would like to talk about are the break and enters and the thefts. Basically, these are the ones that are catching my attention. We can also notice things like possession of stolen goods or stolen property is a little high. This is a result of having vehicles being dumped in our area. People caught with stolen property in our area doesn't necessarily mean that the product was stolen here, but it was recovered here. And because it's in our area, because it's stolen property, it registered a statistic. So if I break it down a little bit here. All right, break and enters. 60% of the break and enters that we get in Edson are against businesses. 20% are outside buildings, so garages, sheds, and places like that. 16% are residents. Theft under. This is one of the biggest calls for service that we get in terms of property crime. 43% are from motor vehicles. So stealing stuff from the back of the truck or unlocked vehicles, stolen license plates, that represent 43% of all the thefts in Edson. 26% are shoplifting. So just to give you an idea. So, making me think maybe a little bit of education in the area of, locking our vehicles, taking valuables away would probably be something that would go a long ways to reduce that number. Now, other criminal crimes. The big number there is our fail to comply and breaches. I've talked about that in the past. We saw such a great increase last year. This is due to COVID, court closure. We did not have people put on conditions or not attending court because the court was closed. Now that court was back in session, it regenerated those calls for service. So if we compare it to last year, the numbers seems to be high, but when we look at 5 years ago, we see that we are below that number. Now, I attached the statistics for the first quarter of 2023, which is technically the last quarter of our fiscal year, January to March. And if you look at those numbers, we are in a good position. Basically, we are looking at, when we look at persons crime, a decrease of 16% for the same time period last year. We're looking at property crime, 21% lower for the same time as last year. And then other criminal codes, 50% lower. So now we see that this breaches number is normalizing itself, and that's why we're having such a difference compared to last year. So that's basically an overview of our statistics that we had in 2022. I'm really happy with the work that the members of the detachment. I think that being able to reduce property crime especially, it was quite the achievement because we've been doing it for a few years in a row. So credit to the members of the detachment for doing that. All right. Moving on, annual performance plan results. So basically, oh, sorry, I think my slide here is, yes, okay. So our annual performance plan priorities. So sorry, this is a typo. It's for 2022-2023. Our goals for that time period was to reduce crime. One of the target was 10% reduction of thefts. So we were only looking at theft over $5,000, under $5,000, and vehicles. We had a goal of 1,200 visibility patrols. That number is for town and county combined, and 6 self-generated drug investigation completed by our general investigation sections. We wanted to accomplish 30 community contacts, and we had an internal priority. We were not sure if training would be, started back after COVID and whatnot, so we had 4 in-person training for the members to develop their skills and skills and knowledge. So if we look at crime reductions, great results. In 2022, we saw combined reductions of 23% of thefts in Edson. So it was an overall 17, but if we only look at thefts, 23% reduction. Again, really happy with the work that my members did. They worked hard and the results are paying off. Staffing levels are one of the reasons. We were, fully staffed. The patrols and visibility are making the effect or having the effects that we're wishing here. They are deterring crime, and we are also stumbling on crimes while they're happening. So it's working. We created that crew position. One member not tied up to the radio, having that freedom and liberty to go after the prolific offenders, look after those drug deals happening and whatnot, is also having a direct impact on that number. And in November, like we do every year, we did the warrant roundup. 35 people were arrested on multiple warrants. Another 25 were checked, but he moved out of our jurisdiction. So they're someone else's problem at this time. So now if we look at the visibility patrols, so again, town and county combined in 2022-2023, we completed over 2,000 patrols. 1,100 of those were in the town of Edson alone. And during those patrols, the members are attending schools, patrolling school zones, looking for any, running vehicles, looking for stolen plates, stolen vehicles, crime in progress, suspicious people. All right, and this is what is helping us to reduce our crime in the community. Crew is also doing those patrols, although their numbers is not tally in that 2,000, and they do the same thing, although they have a little bit more freedom as they don't have to answer calls. So they are able to focus a little bit more on drugs activities. They can help with our general investigation sections to do some surveillance and whatnot. And again, their work has provided assistance to the general duty members, to GIS, and is part of our results that we're showing here tonight. Self-generated drugs investigation by GIS. In 22-23, we were only able to complete 1 proactive investigation. A few of the factors. One, we had a shortage of members on the floor at one point, so we had to move GIS down to a general duty capacity to fill the voids in the general duty aspect of policing. And they were also tasked with some large investigations, so that takes away a little bit of their time to do some proactive work. Some of them, like we remember, we had a few allegations of sexual assaults that occurred at some of the school locally here. So they were involved in investigating those. They're still looking into those. There's a housing situation in the county. There was a suspicious death in town that was linked to some B&Es and stolen vehicles. So they were tied up with a little bit more bigger investigation this year, so that took away some of their time. They did try a bait truck operation, so believe it or not, we had a bait truck here in Edson for about a month, and nobody even looked at the truck, unfortunately. But we brought it here, we tried, just nobody bit. So, crew was also part of GIS proactive work. Crew did do about 4 drug files during the year. So kudos on Trevor here for catching those criminals in action. Community engagement. We had a goal of 30 contacts. 61 community contacts were completed in 2022, 2023. Now I'm talking Edson and County combined. We're looking here at school presentation, attending Canada Day, Remembrance Day, the Edson Jamboree, the bike rodeo that we do in May, Gold Rush Days, the Medicine Lodge Rodeo. So basically be present during community activities. Attend the lunch with the seniors, the Pioneer Cabin, the town halls, all those times that we can have those contact with the community, get the pulse of what we're doing, get their input, always valuable. Aside from those 61 contact, we sent out 27 media release, attended multiple COP meetings, council meetings, met with CAOs, county and town, protective services, just to stay on top of what's going on in the community. As well, on top of those 61 community contacts, members attended schools 59 times this year. Sometimes it was for a presentation, some other times it was just to stop by and say hi, but this is basically our footprint in the school this year. All right, training. So our goal was 4 members. 14 members were able to improve their skill and knowledge through different courses. We have the members that attended the property examiner course. So basically the basic fingerprint on stolen property course. Radar and laser, there was a big need in our detachment for this. We had a lot of younger members that did not have that training that are now trained. The conducted energy weapon, the taser. 1 member took the incident command system 200. The violence threat risk assessment, VITRA. That member attends when possible any requests from schools or from the school board. When there's some situation in the school or school environment. Farm investigation, human sources, police and public safety instructor course. So basically we have an in-house member that can train now members on how to use a taser, on how to use the police baton, how to use the pepper spray and all this. So we have someone in-house that can do that. So successful with training this year. Next, the budget. So in 2022, 2023, the initial budget set by the RCMP based on previous years and their estimation was about $2,651,000. At the end of the 4th quarter, we're about $19,000 over that budget at $2.67 million, but which is below the mid-year readjustment based on how everything is going. So I want to say we were on budget. The initial one, we blew it a little bit, but then if we look at the mid-year, we were under by almost, quick calculation, but like $10,000-ish. So the drivers of the budget here, the forecast, even though we have 17 positions at the detachment, due to vacancies, transfers, and whatnot, they estimated that Edson would only pay for 16 positions. We ended up being at 16.13. So right there, that's about that $19,000. Guards, we had a lot more prisoners than previous years, about double the prisoners, so double the cost of guards. Fuel cost, believe it or not, like doubled, just because of the increase compared to other years. And because we were fully staffed, though, overtime was kept below what was forecasted. It started at 106. It was at the mid-year adjustment. It was reduced at 290, and we were about $86,000 of overtime. So budget, we were like on budget. All right. So now the goals for this year, after the consultation that we had with you, with the population, these are the goals that we've set. I'll be honest with you, the recipe that we have right now is working, so we didn't change it. We just tweaked it a little bit. So we are still targeting property crime as our crime reduction strategy. Now, instead of having crime specifically, we're looking at that overall property crime categories. Let's try to get it down by 5%. So how we're going to do this, working with community partners like COPs, the CPOs, the oil and gas companies, our town halls get input. Same thing that we're doing this year. Crew position is staying on board. We are focusing on our prolific offender management, trying to have more drug investigation this year. And again, we'll do again our warrant roundup, hoping that we will have good results again for 2023, 2024. Proactive patrols, same thing. We're going to do those. They are producing tremendous results. We're increasing the number to 1,400. Now, someone might say, hey, you were at 2,000. Why don't you try to be at 2,000? The goal of the annual performance plan is not to beat yourself or beat the score that you had the year previously. It's to look at your resources and look at your abilities and what you anticipate that is needed to achieve your goals. And 1,400 proactive patrols is a reasonable amount. Same thing, visibility in the community, patrolling recreational area, traffic enforcement, trying to stumble on crime in progress, deterring crime by being present, basically like we did last year. And community goals. This one we bumped it up, 60 community contact. We did 61 last year. I don't see why we cannot do the same this year. Same thing, school visits, youth engagement, attend community events, media release, town hall, liaise with elected officials, CAOs, all on the menu for 2023, 2024. Same internal goal. We want to continue to train our members. Reason for this is we're getting a lot of new recruits every year. So some of the courses that we have identified, the bike course, would be nice to have some members to have the ability to, patrol the trails that we have around here on bicycles. ATV snowmobiles, we have that equipment, but we barely have anybody trained in that to operate those. And the interview course, just honing on their investigator skills. And that would be it. Any questions for our year-end report?
Thank you very much for your presentation, Staff Sergeant Delisle. We will go to Councillor Moore. Go ahead.
Through the chair to Staff Sergeant. What would you attribute the decline in property crime to?
So, basically, our approach. The fact that we have increased. Oh, sorry. Thank you very much for your question. Sorry. So, basically, the approach that we're taking a multifaceted approach. So obviously we have at the detachment the mindset that this is our priority. So we're looking towards, dealing with this. So the members know that, hey, if I'm dealing with property crimes, as much as I can in the ability of my, positions and whatnot to lay some charges and make sure that we reduce it. Now, with our patrols, same thing, same focus. We're looking for people trying to break into sheds, break into garage, break into houses. Having that contact with the community. Even though we're attending just the fair or the rodeo or something like that, we're creating those bond and link with the population, and they help us doing our job. Now, they don't see us as just the police and the people that they cannot talk to. They see us as a partner, as someone that they can trust, as someone they're willing to disclose that something happened or are willing to provide a statement. So all that work that we're doing is basically producing results. Like I mentioned a little earlier, right now, the recipe that we have is working, so we're continuing down that road.
Thank you, Staff Sergeant Delisle. Councillor Pasichny.
Yeah, maybe further to Councillor Moore's question. Historically, our stats would always drop when some of our so-called locals were incarcerated. Are we in that position right now? Do we have a lot of our regulars that are in jail currently, or are we expecting them to come out? Because historically it was our stats drop, it looks really good, and then, they're going to get out of jail, and then they spike right back up until we can put them away. So do we have a lot incarcerated right now, or?
No, not any different than normal. I don't anticipate there'll be any rise for who is away right now and who's in the community. I don't anticipate there'll be any spike in the stats.
But you're right, sometimes when we have certain criminals back in the community, they are a little bit more prolific than others. It could have an effect, but yeah, I was just wondering if we had like certain individual that would be falling into that category, but yeah, no, perfect, okay. That's good.
All right, council, any other questions? Councilor Taylor?
Yeah, through the mayor to Staff Sergeant, thank you for the presentation and thank you for the work that you've been doing. One of the things that I really like seeing is the community engagement that you've done. I've seen members throughout the community, lots of different events yourself, being at so many, and I think that plays a huge role in the stats that we're seeing. Thank you for that. Like you, I did see the 14% of sort of youth sexual assaults. Is that something you plan on sort of communicating with schools with or trying to address, or is this, do you think, is perhaps a one-off or just hearing your thoughts on that?
Yes, when I saw that number, I was personally surprised. I strongly believe there's an education piece that needs to happen. I think there's maybe something that is not passed along to some of our younger people, that there's some things that are acceptable, that some others that are not. Now, we can be part of that message. I don't know if it's the police role to be the driver of that message for sure, but we can be a partner in this. But I think it's an education piece because without going into some of the files or the details of those files, reading them, you can totally see that it's someone that just was not probably aware of where some boundaries apply.
Thank you. Council, any further questions, comments, or concerns? Councilor Bevan.
Through the chair, previous reports you got from us, you had said that we had to run on catalytic converters and stuff like that. Is that still a concern in the town right now that people are out there doing this?
So no, we do have the odd one happening from time to time. We're actually, this is, coming in a theater near you, we are actually having a program to prevent any escalation in that type of thefts. One of our new member, Constable Michaela, was tasked to create a program based on something that's done somewhere else to basically, it's called Etch It and Catch It program, where we will be etching the serial numbers of vehicles on catalytic converters, making it easier for us if we stumble on someone with catalytic converters with them, being able to track down if they are the owner of that catalytic converter or if it belongs to another vehicle, i.e. being stolen from that vehicle. So we are working on this. We're in the process of buying the etching machines shortly. So we will initiate this and start this soon in Edson. But it's not because we are having a wave or a problem with this. It's to really be preventive here and having someone in place that in case we have someone or some criminals coming here wanting to do this, we're prepared.
All right, thank you. Councilor Chenard.
Okay, actually, thanks for your report. The one I found interesting is 26% of your crimes details under 5,000. You normally get complaints from store owners, RCMP never respond, but but that's the complaint. But I mean, this is saying 26%. So a lot of times the complaint I would hear is, well, it's not enough money, which I know is untrue. So 26%, roughly how many is that then? Like, what was the total?
So you're talking to 26%
Of the theft under 5,000.
Oh, okay, the 26% are shoplifting?
Yes. How many is that in total number approximately?
Oh, of files? You would have, I would have to split the number here. Sorry, I haven't done that.
Even just a rough number, because that's the complaint I hear. The RCMP do nothing about
Let me look
shoplifting,
here
but
quickly.
the
So
stats are proving otherwise.
So theft under, we have 187 files in 2022. So let's round it up, 50%, 50 files.
Okay, yeah, because that's where I found, because that's the complaint I get, and I go, well, according to the stats, that information is incorrect.
So it's interesting that you're bringing this up. I have noticed that, yes, not necessarily every circumstance or situation that the victim is wanting or willing to follow up with the complaint. And where I'm saying by this is, so we have a theft, it's a shoplifting. Yes, it's a little item. It's not a lot of value. But then they decide not to continue and press charges. Therefore, we're just concluding the file at that point. There would be value if people would provide a statement and willing to go to court. I understand that sometimes you have to weigh like the value, the time you're might be losing in court and whatnot. But that's how we eventually get rid of that type of crime, is when people get the message that here it's not tolerated. So that's the message I would like to send tonight for sure. That even though it's small, if it's a theft, we need to address it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bevan.
Through the chair, when we had to evacuate the town here and that, how did you feel your department worked, and was it, do you have to make any more changes or a lot of changes, or were you satisfied with what took place with yourself and other detachments coming in to help you?
I'll be honest with you, I was extremely happy with the way it went. Extremely happy with the cooperation with the town, with the county, because we also had to evacuate the county. We receive tremendous support from the RCMP, from other detachments across the province. Basically, when we needed them, we had all the police officers that we needed. The evacuation of the town overall went very well. Took about 2.5 hours to get rid of that big traffic jam on 4th Avenue that, in a sense, flowed at a steady pace. It was slow because there was a lot of vehicles, but no, it went very well. Very proud of the members, what they did. Yeah.
Thank you, Staff Sergeant Dalal. Any other questions, comments, or concerns from council? Councillor Bevan.
Through the chair. Previous there, we had talked about, or you guys had talked about body cams.
Yes.
Is there any progression on that, or you're still looking at going into
Yes.
something like that? Is it cost is too much or whatever?
So the body cameras are coming. They are right now in a pilot project in few detachments. Grand Prairie is one of them. So based on that pilot project, then like the final program of the body cam will be rolled out. I don't have it, I have it with me. I would have to look into it, but there are some numbers roughly how much that would cost. There is, if I remember right, some sort of a monthly fee for the storage and maintenance of the equipment. But it is a tool that is coming. I'll be honest with you, everybody else is filming us. Why don't we film them too? So can't wait to have them, to be quite honest.
Thank you. Council, any other questions, comments, or concerns? I'm very happy to see body cameras coming. I think it keeps everyone honest on all sides of the situation. My question has to do with the recent evacuation and the fires. Is there going to be any costs associated with that to the municipality? Obviously, we had a lot of extra resources here, or is that going to be covered under the provincial contract?
So because it will be covered under the provincial contract. It was basically a provincial effort, and we were giving a special, what we call in the RCMP world, like a collator code and internal order number to reallocate those expenses to the province.
All right, thanks for that. And I do want to thank yourself and your members for their tremendous work, even helping load some patients onto buses and lots of extras that happened. And it was great to see Deputy Commissioner Zublocki come to visit us as well after the evacuation to show his support for our community. So with that, we have no other questions. You're free to stay if you like, but we certainly understand if you want to enjoy the rest of your evening. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, we are going to move on to our second delegation of the evening, Edson Seniors Transportation Society, presented by Don Mitchell, Executive Director.
We're good to go. Just navigate through the PowerPoint with this.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for having me. I gotta move my chair up. I feel like a little kid.
I know our council chambers aren't as nice as the one you're used to, but I do apologize if the roof leaks on you.
Without something like that. It's nice and warm in here, I will tell you that, right? Perfect. It's good. Okay, we'll get started here. So thank you guys so much for having me. Do I just click?
You just use the arrow keys left and right is the best way.
Daniel, I have to tell you about him. I owe him Advil, Tylenol. I owe him a ton of things. He's such a good sport. So thank you. Okay, so our presentation objective. I'm going to explain to you who we are and who we serve. The ESTS buses, we're going to go over the 22 ridership statistics, the 22 year-end financial review, 22 accomplishments, and finally the 2023 accomplishments and actionable items. So who we are and who we serve. So ESTS was established as a society in 1984. Right now we are 5 volunteer board of directors and 1 town rep, Councillor Bevan, and we truly appreciate him on the board. We have 1 part-time executive director, that's myself, 1 full-time driver, and 5 part-time drivers. And we serve seniors and people of all ages with mobility challenges in Edson. Sometimes people don't realize that we do serve persons other than seniors. About our buses, we own 2 buses, a 2014 and a 2016 Starcraft. They're both 18 passenger seating capacity, and we can seat 4 wheelchairs on those buses, though it does reduce our passenger seating capacity, and it is lift accessible. So moving into our 2022 ridership statistics, I put this slide in here just to let you know that as one of our main funders, we really like to offer, we want to offer full-time services during the day. So those are our operating hours. We're closed, of course, federal and provincial holidays. In our ridership stats, so I'm the warm-up act for Mr. Powers behind me here. He's going to give you like the best information of all. So I'm just going to quickly summarize this. So adult day program last year in 2022, we had 88 financial institutions. We took 334 persons to financial institutions. The library was 36, shopping center 868. Of interest here is down at the bottom where it says other, visiting a friend or family member at their residence was 352. That's really important. And I wish we could quantify it better, or I could narrow it down better for you, because it's those social interactions are really, really important. So a lot of times that is someone visiting their spouse in long-term care. We pick them up at their house, they go to long-term care and visit them, or we have people who go to visit their friends at Parkland Lodge. So that's what the other is. Moving on to, the number of trips that we made was 5,163 in 2022. Total kilometers driven around Edson was 23,245. Why is it so slow? Number of people able to walk onto the bus was 5,614. And the number of people requiring lift services was 706. Moving on, the number of individuals transported were 3,585. So here is that, the ridership stats for 2022. I don't like doing this each month. The board always laughs at me because I really don't. I don't like entering this information. It's really tedious. But the output at the end is, it's invaluable information. It's really good. Oh, it's too far for you guys to see. So interestingly enough, you would think that the number of trips would be highest when it's coldest out last year. And it was, I guess, kind of, but it really is high in the summer. It shows that people want to get out in the summer. They want to go do things, right? So I'm happy that we can be of service there. Because he's coming up behind me with just an impressive amount of information, I'm going to leave that be. Our ridership fees, we heavily subsidize ridership fees, and we're able to do that because of the Town of Edson Council. Our ridership fees are as follows. Membership fees, it costs you $20 per year. Anybody can have a membership. If you have a membership, it's $30 for 10 one-way trips, or $4 per one-way trip. If you're not a member, you can still ride the bus, but it's going to cost you $5 per one-way trip. So there's 3 different ways that you can pay to get a ride. So to follow is our 2022 financial statements prepared by Margaret Barford, Rathgeber, Jolly, who else? Startervids. Just keep naming. So our revenue sources, we have 6 different revenue sources. The first one, the largest, of course, is the grant that we received from the Town of Edson. The second is fundraising. Then we have membership fees and bus passes, donations, advertising, and charters. So it is really important that we come each year to present to you and say thank you and show you and explain to the penny how we're spending ratepayer money, and we appreciate it. The total revenue that we brought in last year was $148,153. Our expenses, they came in less than our revenue, which was good, at $123,153. So our net revenue was $25,014. Our net revenue allocation, so 100% of the money that came from the golf tournament, thank you all very, very much, went into our capital savings account to go towards our new bus. Now, this approximate cost of a new bus that I noted here, so I put $110,000. Well, that was a number that the board kind of had a few years back. We all know that that has changed, right? And I don't think that'll get us a lift. That being said, it's just an approximate, right? And I think this slide shows that we have full intentions of saving for a new bus, and we're doing our best, and we'll just keep plugging away, right? Our 2022 accomplishments. So the board transitioned from a working board to a governance board and hired an executive director. We had the Northern Metallic fundraiser, trivia night. We had the mayor's inaugural golf tournament. We were invited to participate in the Town of Edson transportation study, which has been amazing. Ridership and bus advertising and charter booking brochures went out. We did a bylaw rewrite. And to give back, we gave free transportation to seniors wishing to attend any Seniors Week events in Edson. So here's a few little highlights. I think there's people in the room that will appreciate some of these pictures that they didn't know I was putting on here. So this is when we transitioned from a working board to a governance board. This is that handsome group right here. The Northern Metallic fundraiser, as I mentioned, that was a cold day, but it was a lot of fun. The 2022 trivia night. I think we've got someone in here that wins once a year, something like that. Something like that, yeah. So that was a ton of fun. What else do we have? Oh, the Mayor's Charity Golf donation presentation from the paper. So that was, I mean, everybody had a good time at that event. We created brochures. This was our ridership information brochure. This was our advertising and charter bookings brochure. We rewrote the bylaws so that, they were created in 1984 and they weren't done again until 2002. They were 22. They were a bit overdue to be done. So our 2023 accomplishments, we finalized the budget. We finished up board orientation binders. Trivia night, we were honored to be able to provide transportation and shuttle services for those in need during the recent wildfire evacuations. Alberta Health Services preferred list of transportation providers. We were accepted onto that. We received a large donation from 100 Women Who Care, and giving back again this year is free transportation, ironically, during this week for Seniors Week. So here's a little recap. See some familiar faces. So this is April Fool's Trivia Night. I think everybody's there. It was a ton of fun, really good time. There's a big shot of everybody there. So this, I put this in there for a reason. So the picture on your top left is looking at Wildwood from the highway. It was horrific. And lots of times you don't get the opportunity to sit before a good group of people that fund you and say thank you. Because if it wasn't for our grant funding that we receive from you guys, we wouldn't have had the ability to offer these services. We just simply wouldn't be running. So we were able to be of service to so many different groups. And there we are at the Leisure Center. That was in Edson. And so you'll probably recognize this. So these are actually Wildwood folks that came from that fire. And they were so happy. I believe Councillor Bevan had a really great conversation with the gentleman on the right in that picture. He sang a song to you, if I remember correctly. Yeah, yeah. So we'll move on. So yeah, there's so many people that and places that we were, and I just want to thank everybody and the drivers and the staff. And you don't get that chance very often. So thank you guys. Moving on, coming right out of that, we went into 100 Women Who Care. So I am blessed to be a part of 100 Women Who Care, as is our chair, Gamoka. And yeah, she's amazing. She jumped up and she presented, and $7,400 is what we brought in. So it's a really great group. After the meeting, any of y'all asked me about it. It's a fantastic group. Anyways, so we were able to accomplish that this year. Yeah, it's our lovely bus. So you'll see all the new advertising on there. We're so proud of that. We're just going to keep getting better. Our 2023 actionable items, I had put up there future planning, and I thought I don't want to put future planning because that means that you plan to do something, you're not going to get it done. So these are actionable items. I guarantee you when we come back next year to present, we will have wiped these off the table. So we're going to get some ESTS merchandise out there. That's going to be our 7th revenue stream. I don't know how much it'll bring in, but we're going to give it a go, right? So we've got an ESTS website and increased social media presence. This is really going to be a struggle for me. Anybody who knows me knows that but I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. We have got our first ever strategic plan coming up in September. We're super stoked about it. I'm really excited again to be on this side of the table where I just get to listen and take notes. It's going to be a new experience, and we have such a great board. I'm really excited to see what they come up with for ideas, and so that's going to be really exciting. We're at that same time, we're going to revisit the ESTS mission and vision statement. Again, this stuff hasn't been done since 1984. So we do need to revisit it and just tweak some things and, tighten up things. And we are throwing in, just for the fun of it, a second fundraiser on September 23rd. So y'all need to come. It's going to be a live band and dance at the Legion. When was the last time you went to that? There'll be dinner and fun things, and yeah, so it'll be fun. And apparently they have quite the following. They have groupies. So they're from Red Deer, and yes, they have groupies. So you got to be there. It's going to be the happening place. So our promise to you is that we will promote opportunities for inclusion by providing safe, accessible transportation for Edson residents. We will be fiscally responsible. We will treat all of our clients with dignity and respect. We will serve our community with pride and professionalism. And honestly, we just thank you so much for your continued support and allowing us to come every year and present to you. And thank you to Councillor Bevan for being such a huge supporter of ESTS. You are at everything. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that very informative presentation. And I just ask maybe our staff to send it out to council so we can have a closer look at some of those stats after the meeting. So we'll open the floor. Council, do you have any questions for Ms. Mitchell? Go ahead, Councillor Moore.
Through the chair. Don, I imagine at some point in the near or distant future, you might have to contemplate the purchase of an electric bus. Has that been under discussion already?
Yeah, but it tanked, if I was to be honest with you. So we did have, a bit of a discussion, but in this climate, we're not sure how that would work. And that will definitely be a conversation at strat plan for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chenard.
Thank you, Don, for your presentation. My question is about the new bus too. How soon before you're going to need to replace? You have a 2014 and 16, and just wondering how soon and how much money you guys are going to be looking for funding through donations or whoever.
So, like I said, I actually have a meeting next week with this bus guy to talk about costs, right? But until the strat plan, the board hasn't really decided what they are looking for exactly, whether it be a lift bus, whether it be a van, whether it be a combination of the two, what that looks like, right? So we do need to work on that. We are a long ways off when it comes to our shortfall in money. That being said, we apply for grants constantly. We're always looking for, ways to raise money. And I think that is important for you guys to know that we are not just showing up here saying, can you make up the difference? That's not the case. This is a really, really active board, and we're really out there hustling.
Thank you for that. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Bevan.
Through the chair, Don. I'd just like to note that in here that you guys are also putting money away every month into the bus fund, if I remember right in that. And what are you putting, $1,000 away?
Yes, sorry. Thank you. Sorry. Am I supposed to say through to the presenter? You guys are supposed to correct me on this stuff. Through to the presenter. No, through to Councillor Bevan. Through the chair.
You're fired.
Yeah. So through the chair to Councillor Bevan. Yes, we put $1,000 away a month starting in January. That was a board decision that was made. So going into 2023, we had the full amount of the golf tournament money in there. And at the first of every month, we transfer $1,000 into our savings account. At the end of the year, if there's extra, of course, we will drop a chunk in there. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Council, any other questions, comments, or concerns for Ms. Mitchell? I don't see any. I think your presentation really highlights the need for your services in our community, and I, on behalf of council in the town of Edson, thank yourself and your board for the tremendous amount of work that's gone on over the last couple of years. As we've had our previous discussions, it's a really vital service in our community, and we want to make sure it's viable, and that's why council increased funding to ensure that we had a position that can help coordinate and do the work that you're doing. So thank you for that. I recently had the opportunity to ride the seniors transportation bus. We were a charter with some other individuals in the room, and it came very clear to me that we need to invest in some new buses. And the fire showed that we need lift buses. I don't know what would have happened if we did not have that here in our community that night. And the tremendous efforts by yourself and the volunteers and your drivers, I can't thank you enough. So we look forward to future discussions and your encore presentation coming up after you. So thank you.
Thank you.
You're free to stay for the rest of the meeting if you like. But we certainly understand if you want to move along. All right, we will have our next item, the transportation study update and council engagement. Come on up.
So is the PowerPoint on here? Or? And Mr. Mayor, as this is technically a report from administration or some administrative project, it'd be ideal to get the motion on the floor as well. Before we
Can I get a motion, please, that council accept the transportation study update and council engagement report for information? Go ahead, Councillor Byer.
I so move.
All right, thank you. We have that on the floor, and we will move on to the presentation. If you want to introduce yourself as well, sir.
Yeah, okay, great, thanks. Is on here? I was on already? All right, thank you. Hi, my name is Steve Power. I'm a transportation planning consultant with EXP, based in Calgary. And I'm here tonight to take you through our work to date on the Edson transportation study. We're still in the fairly early stages of the the plan. Well, I'd say we're about halfway through. I shouldn't say early stages anymore, but we are partway through. So I'm not here to present results. We're spending some time this week engaging with a number of different groups and individuals in the community to try to get input on some of the issues and challenges and ideas that people may have as we move forward. So for tonight, we'll talk a little bit about what the Edson Transportation Study is. We'll talk about the progress to date. The part that we are done now is the background analysis. Quick overview of the engagement that we're doing this week, and then a little bit of wrap up in terms of what we have left to do in the project. So the Edson Transportation Study is not a sort of a typical transportation master plan or that sort of thing. In a lot of cases, we'll go into community and we'll do a transportation master plan. The first thing we'll do is do a traffic forecast and figure out where we need new traffic signals and left turn lanes and everything else. That's not what the focus is of this study. It's really about looking at those who are unable to drive or choose not to drive and how they get around your community. So it really is looking at taking care of those who really need to be able to get around and don't have the advantage of being able to just jump in a car and go where they like to go. And there are certainly plenty of people in every community, and this community is no different, that require that. So there's a real focus here on active transportation, so walking or wheeling of any kind, and we include mobility scooters and that sort of thing into the active transportation group. And then the other side of it is some form of public transportation as well, whether that be expansion or this running your ESTS exactly as you have it, or maybe there's other opportunities out there to look at different models. A lot of this comes from a survey that the town did back in 2020. And one of the questions was, on a scale of 1 to 10, please indicate how effectively transportation needs are being met in Edson. You scored 6 out of 10, and we can certainly do better. It's interesting, when we talked to the interagency committee yesterday, they said, well, 6 out of 10 sounds actually really high, but they forgot that, and you'll see this stat come up later, that 90% of the people drive to work. Well, those 90% are actually being fairly well served. So when you get 6 out of 10, and 90% of the people should be fairly well served, that remainder is heavily weighting that number to get it down to 6 out of 10. So certainly I think that message it's something we can do better on. So in terms of our overall work plan and the progress to date, we finished the background analysis piece, and we're now in the midst of the public and stakeholder engagement phase. Immediately after this week, we'll be deep into the actual drafting of the transportation study and looking to have that done probably in about a month from now, so mid-July. And then we'll be back to you for the presentation of the report. And we do have some contingency. The scheduled finish is the end of September. We're aiming to have it done by the end of August. So if something comes up, if we have any hiccups or that sort of thing as we go through some of this, we do have a little bit of contingency in there. So as a starting point, we went back and looked at some of the foundational documents. One of them is the social needs assessment that was done in 2014. And that really starts to highlight what some of those specific needs are. It's not about transportation necessarily, but it is about some of the needs in the community, and it's all tied together. Getting people to the services they need to get to is what transportation is about. Your municipal development plan is heavily focused on your growth and land use. And many people will tell you the best transportation plan is a good land use plan, because transportation is about getting people from point A to point B, from an origin to a destination, and that's what land use is. That's how we generate trips. That's how transportation is derived. So if you don't have any land use, you don't have any transportation. The Trails Master Plan is a really important one. While it had a recreational focus to it, it is foundational in terms of looking at your active transportation network and facilities. So we're taking that and we're looking at the the Trails Master Plan, not so much from that recreational perspective, but pulling the elements out that are sort of utilitarian in nature. How does that part of the network help us with day-to-day trips and getting to places that people need to get to? We've done a little bit of a look at the intermunicipal development plan, because the relationship with Yellowhead County is important. Not a lot on that, but we did take a look at that. And the other one is the municipal servicing plan update, and that was an important one because it actually takes care of a lot of the issues that you come up with in a typical transportation master plan around things like your road network. It deals with the road network. It has a road classification. It has future projects. So it really takes that out of this project, and we're building on that rather than trying to revisit it and redo it. So one of the areas in the background analysis, and one of the really good pieces of data, is the 2021 census. And it has an element of it on journey to work. So this is about how people commute and get to work. So of course, this doesn't capture everybody. You only capture those who are in the labor force and going to work. But there's a lot of trips that is exactly the case. So looking at the right side first, we have a very high proportion of people who live in Edson also work in Edson. So they commute to work in Edson. 87% is high for a community, higher than most communities I've seen in Western Canada. So that leads to the graph in the middle, which shows that almost 3/4 of your trips are under 15 minutes to get to work. And those two together create an opportunity. And that opportunity is that you actually have, as a town, as a municipality, the ability to have some influence on a fairly big portion of that. That if you were sending people all over the place, if people were commuting to Hinton and to areas in Yellowhead County and elsewhere in large numbers, you don't really have as much control over it. So this really is an Edson thing that you can address. In terms of how people get to work, not surprising, most are in vehicles. The rest of the province is that way. However, your numbers are higher than the provincial averages. But small and rural communities, that number does tend to be higher than it is. The provincial average gets skewed a little bit by the large urban centers. But that number's gone up since 2016. Having said that, we know 2021 is a bit of an anomaly, and part of the reason we put both years on there. 2021 we were still mid-pandemic, so things like transit, your transit is ESTS for all intents and purposes. Although there are some other services that people have, for getting to work. So at 0.5%, that's low even for a community like yours, but very much related to the pandemic. I will say that you are higher than provincial average on walking to work. So you do have a higher proportion of people in Edson to walk to work than the provincial average. And again, that includes Calgary and Edmonton, where many people live downtown, work downtown. So that's a really good sign, and does say some positive things. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on ESTS. You just had a whole presentation on it. Dawn and I probably could have tag teamed some of this, but this is just taking the data she just showed you and putting it into a little bit of a graphic form. And we looked at all the different drop-off locations within the town, and the circles are sized proportionally to the drop-off. So you can see very clearly that the Parkland Lodge and the hospital are the two main destinations. However, I will say that 2,199, so 2,200 trips that are down the other in the bottom left-hand corner, they really are important. And it's just that there's so many different little spots, that they get coded. One might be to Sobeys and one might be to Shoppers. Well, we know they're in the same place, but they get coded differently. So trying to start to separate all those out and put separate dots on gets really challenging, just because in a lot of cases it is people just going to one place that's very close, or a lot of times they may get dropped downtown and go to several places. So there's a number of other trips that are in there. And then the graph on the right there, I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but that's really just taking that graph that Dawn showed you with the data and just putting it into a little more graphical format. And again, as she said, not surprising that in the winter the trips are a bit lower, because people just don't want to get out as much, and they start to pick up. March is very high. I found the March-November thing quite interesting, but through the summer they're fairly strong. That's when I would say the best sustained ridership is, and again, it's likely because people want to get out and go do things. And then this is the other one that is the reason for travel. That again, she showed you the numbers. If we put it into a chart. And again, destinations, the data collection isn't perfect. So the destinations aren't always broken out into very, very discrete levels, and it wouldn't be worth doing that. It's, for the sake of what we're looking at. But it is interesting to note that, things like shopping are, pushing a third of the trips, and that the whole bit around social interaction, shopping, and restaurants, and that sort of thing make up a fairly high proportion of these trips. And I think it goes back to Dawn's comment about how important those social connections are to the seniors in the community. Moving on now, another area we looked at in the background analysis was taking a good look at the collision data. We have full collision data for 2016 to 2020, so unfortunately that data lags behind. By the time it comes out of police reports, gets put in a database, and then cleaned up and everything else, it takes quite some time to get it from Alberta Transportation. So, but between 2016 and 2020, we had over 1,000 police reported collisions in Edson. So these are, if they're not police reported, so it's just somebody's gone to their insurance company with a fender bender, that doesn't make it into these stats. They are based on police reports. And in that period, 3 of those were fatalities. So there's a fair number of injury and fatal accidents, but of course the property damage are the ones that are by far the most prevalent. 2018, we had a bit of a pop-up. I don't have a good explanation for that. I will say that in general, we see the number of collisions trending downwards slowly. It's as cars, and a lot of that has to do with the vehicle technology, with crash prevention, that sort of thing that's built into vehicles. We're starting to see that slip in on an overall basis. And I think if we had a longer period of data here, you'd see a bit of a downward trend as well here. So this is a map of those locations, and you certainly see a few spots where we've got some concentrations. 51st, you get a concentration along there, but the real concentration is the highways. Not surprising at all. The top left is one that I'm very interested in, and particularly in the context of this study where we are looking at those people who, can't drive or don't drive. Those are collisions that involve pedestrians or cyclists. The first things you'll notice is not a single yellow dot on there. If somebody is in a collision as a pedestrian or cyclist, they're going to get hurt or killed. Full stop. It is highly unlikely that they will come out unscathed. Whereas you crash one great big metal vehicles into another great big metal vehicle, you crunch things up and everybody walks away. So one of the challenges here is to try to eliminate fatal and serious injury collisions. And that's really what we need to do to make sure that people at risk are most protected. So those are ones in the upper left out of that whole 1,000, or so collisions. Those are the ones that really matter. And as I said, when we start involving pedestrians, in particular in our collisions, they get hurt and possibly even killed. So in terms of monthly distribution, again, there's some. We compare this to other places, it's actually kind of similar. You see a bit of a spike in the winter with winter conditions, and you tend to pop up a little bit in spring. But what happens in June and July is the amount that people travel tends to go down because you're not getting people commuting as much. With summer vacations, you may get them traveling to a vacation, but then they go and stay in one place for two weeks. So overall traffic tends to go down in the summertime. It may not seem like that at times because you've got an awful lot of traffic coming through this town going to a certain big destination to the west, but there is an overall net reduction, and particularly if travel within the community will go down a little bit in the summertime. And of course, when the number of vehicle kilometers that are traveled goes down, the potential for collisions goes down at the same time. There's a few publicly available sources of data that we like to look at. One is called Walk Score, and Walk Score is a measure of how pedestrian friendly a particular area is. And it has to do with how easy it is to get to your day-to-day destinations in terms of taking care of your day-to-day activities. And really is looking at those places in that 5 to 10 minute walking distance. A lot of your community is sort of close. And if you really wanted to walk for half an hour, you could probably get to most of the town. But boy, the walkability goes down. When you get past over 400 meters, it becomes much, much less walkable. It's certainly perceived as being less walkable. And then you throw a few barriers in there. Now, Walk Score doesn't do a great job of looking at those very specific barriers. It does tend to be focused on the distance and the network that you can travel on and the destinations you want to get to. I will say that at one time, I remember when it first came out, people looked at it and went, who cares? To give you an idea, they now sell their data, and they sell it for good money. And if you're buying a house, take a look at your realtor listing, and it almost always has a Walk Score on it. It demonstrates how important that walkability is to people, that if realtors are willing to take a valuable space in their listings to talk about Walk Scores, it is important to people. So it's something to look at. And I will say at 29, not that uncommon for a community your size. 100 is absolutely what they call a paradise for walking. Manhattan might be at 100. You're not going to get to 100. I lived in a neighborhood in Calgary that I could walk to Best Buy, I could walk to a Canadian Tire, I could walk to a grocery store and everything else, all within an urban area, and it was about 85, and it was probably about as good as you're going to find in much of Western Canada. So, at 29, you're definitely doing better than some communities, but not surprisingly, one of the issues that you have, you remember that land use discussion, you've got a lot of your services in one area, sort of in between the two highway legs, and then your residential areas are sort of up and around there, and they're not necessarily, your highest densities aren't necessarily close to one another. So that's part of the reason that the walkability number comes down. In terms of biking, it's somewhat bikeable, and a lot of that has to do with just dedicated biking facilities. It's interesting, I find the walk score people don't do a great job of looking at recreational trails. You have a good recreational trail network. But it isn't necessarily well connected for those utilitarian trips. So there's gaps and there's holes, and the bike score component of walk score comes down very quickly when there's gaps in places that you can't connect from one to the other. The last one is just a restaurant choice. It's just something I noticed and they've been doing recently. It's actually a subset of the overall walk score, but it just deals with the eating and drinking piece. And again, your restaurants are really concentrated in a couple spots right on the highway. And the majority of your population really isn't able to easily walk to go get a meal or a drink or that sort of thing. It is very, very car dependent. Another one of those public sources we look at is Strava. Now, Strava is used by people who are out training for the most part, going for a run. They want to track the training, or going for a bike ride and tracking the training. So I don't use it that much to say, hey, this is the best route. I do look at it from the context of what's not working. And if you take a look at the the walking one, you'll see the highway. Once you get to the overpass, that line gets really thin on the highway. That nobody's walking over that overpass, and I don't blame them. And so it is good for helping to find out where we've got some issues in terms of the network. Because if even the most experienced runners and cyclists are avoiding something, it must be bad. On the flip side, if you take a look at the walking and running one, going up to the hospital, you got a pretty heavy line there, but no sidewalks. And it's interesting, when I was out taking a few photos today, sure enough, as I got up around there, a guy came around running across through the roundabout and started running pretty much straight down the street because there was no other place to go for a run. And so it's a fairly thick line there. That means there's a lot of people that are using that, and we don't have any place for them. Last part of the background analysis is a bit of a case study assessment. This isn't necessarily the best example. Sometimes we actually highlight it and show what's not working. Hinton, I would say it's a not working. They have a fixed route, fixed schedule. It is targeted at mobile, low-income individuals, but it takes a long time for that route to complete, and it's costing them a lot of money. Peace River used to have something very similar, and back about 10 years ago, they finally said, you know what, we can't afford this. It's not working. They got rid of it, and they went to a taxi pass program. So they've actually partnered with the taxi companies in town, and they have subsidized passes that they can use to take taxi rides rather than trying to run their own transit system. Innisfil, Ontario did something really interesting. They looked at implementing a local transit system and said, there's no way, we can't afford, I think it was $150,000 a year. This is just not in the realm of possibility. So they actually went, instead of partnering with the taxis, they partnered with Uber. And they originally just said, hey, we're going to make rides with Uber, $5 flat rate within the town in Innisfil, and the town will pick up whatever's extra, and they calculated it out, figured out it was going to cost them less than a transit system. Well, it was so successful that they had to start limiting the number of trips people could take, because it was hugely successful. So I mean, that's a really good sign that people are using some form of public transportation. Northumberland, Lanark, and Perth counties all have door-to-door appointment-based services, not all that different than ESTS, all delivered in slightly different ways, but really quite similar in terms of it. I would actually say that I think ESTS is doing a better job than they are. I think it's organized better. It seems to have a better service, and the big one is almost all those other ones, you got to book way in advance. ESTS still allows you to pretty much call up, and if they're able to make it to come get you, they do it, and that's really important. The last one is Cochrane, which I think is an interesting one, and this applies to Cochrane, Edson, Airdrie, and a bunch of the other communities around Calgary, who have elected not to implement local transit systems. Instead, they've gone to an on-demand service that is actually not, from a framework perspective, that different than ESTS, except it's targeted at the general public. So it's a little bit bigger scale, and they've got some technology behind it. But in Cochrane, you can pull out your phone with an app and book your trip, or you can call a dispatch. You can pay with the app, you can pay with tickets, either way. But they basically have come and said, call us up. What they've done is they've actually instituted stops. And what you're doing is you're saying, hey, next run through, I'll be at the stop. And their technology goes and basically optimizes the route for the bus to go and pick everybody up and drop them off on that route. And so it runs on a regular schedule, but it is completely on demand. So it's an interesting one-on-one that I think is worthy of taking some look at, because I think it can be scaled down to something like this. Finally, what we're up to this week. We had a presentation with the Interagency Committee yesterday. We went to the seniors barbecue. The ESTS bus tour turned out to be not much of a bus tour, because I think after the barbecue, the seniors were done. I know Tracy, the driver, said, geez, I normally have a bunch of calls in the afternoon. But I had a really good chat with her and got some really good perspectives on the nuts and bolts operation of ESTS, which was wonderful. This morning we had a number of stakeholder interviews. That list expanded from what's up there since this PowerPoint was put together. And then went out with some of the Edson staff this afternoon and just did a bit of a tour around town to look at some of the areas of interest. Council workshop tonight. Back to the one-on-one interviews tomorrow. We got a few more that are on there. One I'm really looking forward to is a couple of grade 8 classes that we're going to work with tomorrow. We have a neat little exercise where they're going to go and redesign 50th Street for you. We'll see about that. Anytime I've done this exercise, they usually come up with one version that's actually pretty good and then one that's just out there. So
Are they going to fund it?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then we have a public drop-in late afternoon tomorrow, and then finally wrap it up with the pancake breakfast at Seniors Week. So remaining tasks, as I said before, summary report this week. Then we're into the problem identification and gap analysis. Over the next month, we'll get the report written, and then the final adoption of the actual report. Thank you. And I'm open to any questions and discussion.
So just a point of clarification, are you looking for some input from council this evening as well?
If you have thoughts on ideas, on specific challenges, same as we're asking everybody else, I'm happy to hear them.
All right. Thank you, council. Do you have any comments that you'd like to provide? Any questions about the presentation? We'll open the floor. Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor to the presenter, thanks so much for taking on this study, and look forward to seeing the end results. Do you work at all with the school board itself in terms of the transportation department? They do provide busing in town. Obviously, there's a fee that's attached to it. Wondering if that sort of fits into what you're doing, or is that sort of something else?
Yeah, it's a little bit off to the side. It's not in our scope for this in particular. I have done a few plans where we have had some fairly close discussions with the school boards. In general, though, they work at a much more operational level than sort of that higher level planning. So they do better when you throw an idea at them and come to them with something very specific, then they can respond. I find they're not very good at most school boards at sort of looking more than start of next school year. So, sometimes it's better off if you've got a proposal. They're usually pretty good at responding to those. And I know in a lot of communities, they have where public transit is available. They will start to look at that and look at moving some of their busing requirements onto public transit. But I do find the school boards a little tough to get through to early on. So we usually will talk to them, but do not expect a lot.
Thank you, Councillor Chouinard.
Through the chair to the presenter. Following, I'm looking for more information, and I'm gathering right now the town of Edson providing funding to our seniors transportation bus. We're on the right path, because I heard, like I said, the other towns are not. So I look forward to more details on that, how to improve that. So
yeah,
just a comment.
Yeah, and certainly part of the work over the next month is looking at funding options. for whatever recommendations are out there.
Councillor Barr.
Thanks. Through the chair to Steve. Thanks for the presentation. So I understand what the challenges with the walkability aspect and just distance away from things. Is the biking or cycling portion the same way, or can you elaborate a little bit on what biking infrastructure besides something to tie your bike to is?
Yeah, so it's a bit of both, and actually both the walk score and the bike score are tied in the same way. So with bike score, your score is lower in this case because there really is almost no cycling infrastructure showing up, and certainly no separated cycling infrastructure to get you through the street network. And that's one of the things it really looks for. Is if you want to have, sort of an all ages and abilities network, you need to be able to separate from traffic, and you actually don't have any in Edson. So that score is right off the bat not going to be very strong. You have through your trails network a few good places where you can shortcut things, and that's part of the reason why you get a score at all. There are some positives, and it is good. There's some things to build off of. A lot of communities don't have those connections, and so you can't do anything. So if we can build a little bit of infrastructure in this town, and it doesn't have to be expensive, I think you're going to find you can do some really good things for cycling. And when you do good things for cycling, you're also doing good things for anybody moving about on wheels that doesn't need to be on a sidewalk, right? And so you're separating that traffic from vehicle traffic, but you're also separating them from the pedestrians and letting the pedestrians have their own space as well.
Thank you very much for that. Council, any further questions, comments, or concerns? Go ahead, Councillor Pasicny.
Yeah, through the mayor to presenter. You're talking about bicycling. Are you referring to would you get a higher score if you had bike lanes?
Pardon me?
You're talking like bike lanes in the city where they take away the roads and the bike lane that doesn't get used?
I'm not a big fan of taking away lanes off the roadway unless they're completely underutilized. But there's lots of places, and I think, Edson, you've got a lot of it, where you've got way more space than you need. And when you have lanes that are too wide, there's lots of data that shows that your collision rates go up and speeding goes up. And so if you want to keep speeds down on those residential streets, sometimes narrowing it up and borrowing some of that space. But I'm not a big fan of taking away lanes that you need for travel. Again, unless it's way underutilized. Now, I've seen 4-lane roads that carry 100 vehicles an hour, which is a fraction of what one lane can support. So if you're really oversupplied, so for the most part, you look for those opportunities where the space is available, as opposed to taking something away. But I think there are opportunities in Edson, from what I've seen, where you've got more space than you need, and we can do it and just pinch things up a little bit, and you'll get benefits to travel speeds on residential streets, as well as being able to separate some room for cycling. And the focus on that, honestly, I would say that in this case, for biking, it would be some of the safe routes to school would be the focal area of that. I'm not sure that commuting by bike is necessarily where I would be focusing my effort, like it would be in a maybe a different city. It would be the schools, getting that connection so you can get kids to school on something that is safe, that allows them to ride a bike to school. Because especially when you get to those kids that aren't 16 yet, but they're old enough to be doing things on their own, that ability to have independent travel is really important, and giving them a safe way to do it is also important.
All right, thank you. Council, any further questions or comments? Just a question through to you. And you said you had an expanded list of organizations that you're consulting with. So is that going to include organizations like McMahon and some of those?
Spoke to McMahon today.
Okay, perfect. So I know that's a big piece of what ESTS is providing, and I think one of the things that what I've heard from people in our community, especially lower income and seniors, is that transportation link from residences to the hospital. Not everybody can afford a taxi or has a vehicle, so some of those lower income individuals, and you're going to be kind of looking at that as well through the study.
Absolutely. One of the key things is identifying where those key destinations are. We could say everything's a destination, but getting the top 5 or 10, and the hospital comes up over and over and over again. Not just in the ESTS, it's the #1 destination for ESTS, but we're hearing it from every stakeholder we talk to. The hospital is one of the key ones, and some have identified the location of the hospital no longer being in the middle of town, being on the edge of town, as being one of the reasons why transportation is so important. That it's not that easy to get to, but certainly the cost of taxi and and the reliability and desirability of taxi has certainly been raised as an issue, and we've had lots of comments on that. So absolutely is finding those really key destinations and making sure we do a really good job on those rather than trying to hit everything, right? Because you just can't afford that.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. Enjoy the rest of the week here in Edson, and feel free to stay if you like, but we certainly understand if you want to leave for the rest of the evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So with that, council, unless there's any other further comments, I will call the question. Please place your votes now. And there we go. So thank you very much. And I'm just going to call a quick 3-minute recess just so we can have a break because we have a lot of items to still go through this evening. Feel free to stay, folks, if you want. If not, feel free to enjoy the night. And I'll say goodbye to. All right, we will return to our meeting. Thank you for that little bit of a break. Can I get a motion, please, that council amend draft bylaw number 2291 by adding the following new section, 8.25, a person shall not place, cause, or permit to be placed an obstruction of any kind on a highway unless a permanent authorizing placement of the obstruction has been issued by the town, by striking out the first sentence of section 8.14 and replacing it with the following: no person shall store a vehicle upon a highway unless authorized by a permit issued pursuant to section 8.25, and by adding in Schedule A penalty amount of $100 for obstruction of highway offenses under section 8.25. Councillor Pisichny.
I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Pisichny. And we have Mr. Schramm and Mr. Beck that will be presenting on this, as well as Staff Sergeant Delisle. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks for the opportunity to do a review of our traffic bylaw. So we got a short presentation here. Again, purpose of this is to get review bylaw 2291. And really, it was a consolidation and modernization of all relevant adopted bylaws from the past. A couple other things that we added was, again, allowing off-highway vehicle use within the town for the purpose of accessing land surrounding the town, and we need to add some conditions to that as well. And another key spot was really the recognition of the increased use of town streets by trucks and designation of those streets as truck roads. So we've seen that over the past. The trucks are there, but they're really not designated as truck roads, so we want to clean that up. And another key thing was clarification of the definition of recreation vehicles within the bylaw. A bit of background, April 4th, 2023 at the regular council meeting, we had brought this bylaw for first reading. That was done through the resolution. And also, from the second resolution was for public input to bring back to council for consideration. So for the public input, the bylaw was posted on the town website for input, and a survey was made available during the trade show. Summaries of the public input were included in the agenda package for you to review. One summary report was completed for the trade show input, and one was completed for the website. So we kind of kept them separately. In both cases, there's general support for the major changes listed in the bylaw, with those being allowance of the limited off-highway vehicle use in the town, an increase in truck routes to reflect current practices, and refinements to the recreation parking in our community. During discussions from the first reading, the matter of permitting the process for parking of construction trailers, sea-cans, garbage bins, etc. on roads on the short-term basis was raised, and that kind of led to those additions. Administration had no concerns with instituting such a process, as it would allow flexibility and convenience for residents and would help facilitate some development while allowing the town to regulate and control those permits. And again, that was at 8.25 addition and the modification of 8.14. This does align with their strategic plan, creating a connected community that is safe and inclusive. The traffic bylaw is essential to ensuring safe and orderly traffic flows within our community, providing effective leadership and community engagement. This bylaw will help foster a robust policy bylaw framework, ensuring the bylaws are current, appropriate to the community context, and easily understood by the public. So our recommendation is that council amend the draft bylaw number 2291 by adding the following new section 8.25 and by striking out the first sentence of section 8.14 and replacing it with the current wording, and by adding the Schedule A, the penalty amount of $100 for the amount for the obstruction of those sections 8.25. We're also recommending that council give second reading to bylaw 2291 as amended, and that council also consider giving third reading to bylaw 2291 as amended. Questions?
All right, thank you, Mr. Schramm, for your presentation. Council, do you have any questions, comments, or concerns for Mr. Schramm or any of our other presenters here this evening? Go ahead, Councillor Byer.
Thank you. Through the chair to council. I am in favor of the amendments that are proposed tonight on bylaw 2291. But there are some other things I want to point out, and that is that Edson is in rural Alberta, and there are many people with off-highway vehicles. So I understand why that's portions being brought up to council. But not everybody embraces that lifestyle, and there is a need for a voice at the table for those that don't, and I'll be that voice. So there's 3 points I'd like to address. The first is safety. Recently, we harmonized the playground and school zones in the name of safety. And now we're looking at introducing off-highway vehicles on our roadways. So we were trying to make the roads safer for everyone in the fall when we did that harmonization, and now we are going to be increasing the risk. The second point is the erosion in the ditches and back alleys from off-highway vehicle tires and possibly some other areas. So this could create an extra cost to taxpayers if there's any damage in those areas. And the third one is, even though Edson is in rural Alberta, it is an urban area. So what will be the impact on that current urban lifestyle? Some people choose to live within the town because we don't have and we don't allow off-highway vehicles on the roads and ditches. So will the noise levels change because of that? What else will change, and how will people be impacted? So I will vote in favor of the amendments, but I won't be in favor of the next portion for that reason.
All right, thank you, Councillor Byer. Any other questions, comments?
And if, you know, they courteously drive down the roads, but the part I was a little confused, the one where we make them go in the ditch creates a problem. But that's the only.
Thinking they were going to get caught, they just drove out nicely. So I actually think it'll be, as you state, it will be a lot safer in the community, and people aren't, you know, trying to not get.
Point.
I have a rule. It does so.
For ATV use, I just know that behind my house it has been a problem.
Yeah, we have dealt with some, mostly people, like was already been mentioned, racing down the trails, racing across soccer pitches to, again, avoid getting caught. That's the biggest complaints that we have had over the last few years, and we think this will curb that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Schramm. If nobody else has any further questions or comments, go ahead, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, through the chair. Will this allow snowmobilers, say in the winter, to ride their machines up to gas stations to get fuel?
Go ahead, Mr. Schramm.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Moore, no, this is designed to leave your residents to the nearest point exiting the community, not to go around the community to visit.
And I imagine there'll be a very good education piece to that. I think that's probably the key thing that we need to get out to the public. This is not to go cruising around town to your buddy's place to go play poker. So, yeah, I'm sorry. So with that, I will call the question if you would like to place your votes. And that motion is carried unanimously. Can I get a motion, please, that council give second reading to bylaw number 2291 as amended? Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Any further questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, I will call the question. If you would like to place your votes now. All right, and that motion is carried 6-1. And can I get a motion to place for third? Go ahead, Councillor Chouinard.
I'll move for replacement of third.
Go ahead, Daniel, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's no need to place for third at this time because we're not doing 3 readings of the bylaw in one sitting. We've had first reading already, have then proceeded to make an amendment to the draft bylaw, and now proceeding with second and third at this time.
Okay, thank you. So we will remove that from the table and the floor. Can I get a motion, please, that council give third reading to bylaw number 2291 as amended? Go ahead, Councillor Chouinard.
Try again, third.
All right, thank you. Any further questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, I will call the question. Please vote now. And that motion is carried 6-1. Thank you. Can I get a motion, please, that council give first reading to bylaw number 2294? Councillor Bevan.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And we are on the temporary tax payment due dates and penalty dates presented by Sarah Bittner, General Manager of Corporate Services.
Every time. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Presenting tonight is the draft bylaw number 2294 for the temporary tax payment due date and penalty date amendments. With the May 2023 wildfires, they disrupted some normal town operations, including the timeline for issuing tax notices, as we had resources dedicated to wildfire response for a while even after that wildfire. So we looked at historical practices that we've always provided at least 6 weeks between the mailing date and the due date. And in bylaw 2106, which is our taxation bylaw, it does prescribe that taxation due date is June 30th. And that meant that 6-week window had been missed. So we're bringing forward a draft temporary bylaw for just this year that amends that bylaw by extending the taxation due date and penalty dates. You'll recall we also did this, due date would become July 31st. So this would evacuation. We intend to get the notices out before the end of the week if this is passed.
Turns. Go ahead, Councillor Pasichny.
Yeah, through the Mayor, Ms. Bittner. Does that mean
Bylaw that we placed to you tonight.
Any other further questions, comments, or and that motion is carried unanimously. Can I get a motion, please, to give second reading to bylaw number 2294? Councillor Byer.
I so move.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, I will call the question. Please place your votes now. And that motion is carried unanimously. Can I get a motion, please, that bylaw number 2294 be placed for third reading? Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
I so move.
Thank you. It is non-debatable. All those in favor or opposed, please place your votes now. And that motion is carried unanimously. And can I get a motion, please, for third reading? Go ahead, Councillor Pisichny.
I'll move for third.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns? See none, I will call the question. Please place your votes now. And that motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We will move on to reports from administration. Can I get a motion, please, that council approve the disposal of surplus property policy FX3 as set out in attachment 1? Go ahead, Councillor Moore.
I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Moore, and Ms. Bittner is going to present on this as well.
Once again, good evening, Mayor and Council. Presented tonight is a draft policy for the disposal of surplus property. This does not include land, it's other property. So just things that have happened, we've realised there's no clear, consistent approach to the disposal of any of our surplus items. And it's led to some inconsistencies between different departments handling this in a different way. So it would be best to bring everything together and get everything more streamlined. So this draft policy establishes some pricing thresholds on who can then actually say that these things can be disposed of, and some criteria, responsibilities and procedures, and gearing towards openness and transparency, and also maximising the value to the town for these items. And as mentioned, it does not apply to town-owned land. It's governed by a separate policy. There's lots of other items that need to come into play for disposal of land. So within the policy, we have put in some thresholds. So anything with $10,000 or less, a manager can approve the disposal of. $1,000. $1,000 to $10,000, CAO must give the approval for the disposal of that item. Or 10,000 and more, really should come to council for approval for the disposal of that item. It keeps things very transparent and also has council aware of some of those higher priced items that we actually are disposing of. There's different methods of disposal. The first one that we've put on here is interdepartmental transfers. It could be one department might not need it anymore, but another department's would be in great need of that. So instead of them going and buying that and this one being disposed of, everything would then be sent, notices would be sent between departments to see if any other department can use that before we even take it to be disposed of. Next, we can look at trading in against, if it's a vehicle, trading in against another vehicle, and seeing what type of value we would get for that trade-in. As far as sales go, so there's a number of different ways to go about sales. We can do competitive bids, where we can put it on the market and we can get bids in to see what the value of it is might be to other people. The one we've done mostly in the past is also the public auction. Again, that's very transparent as well. It's advertised, as would the other one be as well. We make sure that's advertised as per our bylaw. So then the public auction obviously reaches more people as well, and make sure that it's always competitive and open no matter which one of these ones we go for. In the event that no offer is received through the bidding or the public auction, then we can, depending on the level, can accept any subsequent offer to purchase, so long as it's in the town's best interest. So these sort of the 5 methods of disposal for surplus items. So the recommendation is that council approve the disposal policy as set out in attachment 1.
Thank you, Ms. Bittner. Council, do you have any questions, comments, or concerns with the proposed policy? Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor to Ms. Bittner. So if they're disposing it, essentially they could sell the item, essentially. Where would the funds end up if we ended up selling items such as that?
Go ahead, Ms. Bittner.
Through the chair to Councillor Taylor. I think it would depend on that level of whether it's under the 1,000, maybe just go to a miscellaneous revenue. All of these ones, if it's an asset, if it's part of our asset bank of items, we would obviously need to be looking at the book value of that to ensure we at least get that money for it. Otherwise, once you have to write that asset off, and if you've got less money, you end up with an expense. So there are things like that that will come into play as well. There will be forms that the managers and everyone have to fill in that would have us have all of that information prior to the disposal of the asset as well. So we would know what we're doing prior to disposing. Items such as a large vehicle, depending on, again, if there's no book value left and we've actually sort of made on the deal, if you like. Within our reserve policy, there's statements there that they would be transferred through to the equipment pool reserve.
Thank you, Ms. Bittner. Any further questions, comments, or concerns? All right, with that, I will call the question. Please vote now. Thank you, and that vote is carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Bittner. Can I get a motion, please, that council accept the Citizens Budget Survey Results Report for information? Go ahead, Councillor Bevan.
I'll make it so.
Thank you, Councillor Bevan, and Ms. Bittner will take us through this as well.
Once again, good evening, Mayor and Council. Presenting to you tonight the results of the citizen budget engagement that was run earlier in the spring. So for an overview, the engagement tool ran from April 24th until May 14th. This year we had a total of 269 visitors, but only 85 responses. As you can see, last year we had 392 and 208 responses. This may be due in part to the lower participation for that last week and a bit due to the wildfire. So for each area, for the level of service questions, we asked, for each area, would you like to see higher, lower, or the same level of services for said area? They were able to add comments on each area as well. This year we added a satisfaction slider, as well as a question examining the effect of inflation on municipal capacity and how they felt about that. So we'll run through those as well. Advertising for this occurred in the newspaper, both Facebook ads, and an insert was also included in all the May utility bills. They were sent out on the 5th of May. So there may have also been a delay there because of those utility bills. We also had iPad kiosks located at the trade show, at the Civic Centre here, at the library, and at the Leisure Centre for people who are able to put in, complete that survey in any of these areas as well. So I'm just going to pick some of the information. In your package is the full report that has more of the sort of broke down detail graphs, as well as all of the comments. This is available obviously in your agenda and to the public if they go to the agenda as well for viewing. So this was a new slide from last year that they've added in, and I thought it was quite an interesting slide to look at. So the lighter part were the visitors, and the darker part were the ones that actually went through and hit submit. So we're missing a lot of people there. So there are ways to help engage. The company we actually get this from also do have a marketing part of their company that could maybe give us some ideas to get people to actually go through and hit that submit button. They come in, they've had a look, but there's just something where they don't cut right through and submit. So from the visitors to participants, there was a 31.6 participation rate, and there was around 77 comments left throughout the engagement. So this direct question was also something we decided to put in this year just to get some feedback. So the question we asked was, when the municipality is creating the municipal budget, it often faces higher costs to continue to provide the same level of service. So please indicate which of the statements comes closest to your point of view. So we gave them 3 options. Municipalities should either increase municipal services even if taxes and fees must increase, and we had 10 people vote for that. Maintain taxes and fees even if it means reducing some services to maintain others. So obviously keep it the same, but as I say, reduce some to maintain more, others is 25 people. And decrease taxes and fees even if municipal services must decrease was 17 people. So that was just some feedback we got from a question on how they would feel with how we deal with those inflationary items. I've come to just a summary of the results because of course all the graphs are in your report. So I just did this quick summary doing a percentage of increase, decrease or stay the same. As you can see, the majority on the bold, the most were to stay the same. The RCMP actually had an increase and the same was exactly identical, percentage-wise. And the only one to then hit the increase was the roads, it's not sidewalk and snow. I think we may have seen that result before too. So that was the sort of the summary of the results of the level of service change part of the survey. On the satisfaction side, we've listed all the departments down here with the addition in the bottom this year of administrative services for the satisfaction. So you got the total of people who actually filled in the satisfaction slides on each of those areas. A split between 1 and 10. 1 is obviously most dissatisfied, 10 is the most satisfied. But the average of that on the side is where you can see, I think shows where we sit with each of those departments as far as satisfaction of the service provided. And the recommendation tonight is that Council accept the Citizen Budget Survey Results Report for information.
Thank you, Ms. Bittner, for the presentation. Council, we will open the floor for any questions, comments, or concerns. And we will go to Councillor Barr.
Thanks. Through the chair to Ms. Bittner, thanks for the presentation. I certainly enjoyed going through this. Regarding the landfill, I'm not sure, maybe I'm interpreting this incorrectly. It's showing a decrease in the level of service change. So we're currently open Tuesday to Saturdays and people want us open less than that? Is that how others interpret this as well? It was just one that I'm not sure if I'm interpreting it properly or because I've heard other feedback, right?
So I can bring this back up.
I think my perspective when I look at that, Councillor Beyer, is that people want to pay less for that service. But as we know, our costs in terms of waste management have increased due to regulatory changes quite significantly. So, and we're also trying to get better cost recovery. Unless, Ms. Bittner, you have a different perspective on that.
Through the Mayor, no, I don't have a different perspective on that at all. Yes.
All right. Council, any other further questions, comments, or concerns? I do have to say that I was disappointed to see lower amount of people actually hitting submit, but obviously we're doing it earlier in the year, which is good because it will help feed our budgetary process, but also the circumstances as you highlighted. So, Council, any further comments, questions? Seeing none, I will call the question. Please vote now. And that motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bittner, for your presentations. Can I get a motion, please, that Council authorize all members of Council to attend the Recycling Council of Alberta Circular Economy Conference from October 18th to 20th, 2023, along with associated expenses? Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
I so move.
Thank you. And we do have our legislative officer, Mr. Daniel Lucas, with us, who will present on this evening. Go ahead, Daniel.
Thank you and good evening, Mayor and Council. So this is an item that was brought forward for Council's consideration. The Recycling Council of Alberta Circular Economy Conference could be of interest to Council. In particular, some of the topics that will be covered include extended producer responsibility, which as we know is an upcoming issue in Alberta, but as well as a broader set of environmental and waste management topics such as the circular economy, packaging, organics, chemical recycling, First Nations community innovation, and measurement and accountability. So again, just recognizing that this was a potentially valuable learning opportunity for Council, this has been brought forward for consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas. Council, do you have any questions, comments, or concerns? Go ahead, Councillor.
I'm in favor of all council going except for myself due to a possible conflict of interest. So I believe the value, but I will not be attending on town's dime.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Barr.
Thanks, through the chair to council and maybe administration as well. So I'm certainly in favor, and I mentioned this previously, in having council get a little bit more educated on the extended producer responsibility that's coming. I think that there's a lot of value for us to do that. As we know, there will be some strict timelines. I am kind of wondering, like, it's what, 3 days? And it's during the week, I think, as well. Sorry, I didn't actually look at what the dates were, which makes it challenging for a few people to attend. And I'm certainly in favor of, so is administration planning to attend this as well at all? Like one person? Possibly?
Go ahead, Mr. Kitlitz.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so not at this point, and interestingly enough, I'm going to different associations, a waste and recycling conference next week, and that extended producer responsibility is on that agenda as well. So I guess I am attending one, not this one in particular. So, and I don't think I have any plans at this point, unless that's something that I could talk to my superior about if we want to go down that road.
Go ahead, CO Beveridge.
Mr. Mayor, through to council, just a note on this item. I think one of the key things here in this motion, it says all, and I think it just clearly should just say members of council be permitted to, and rather than all, because essentially, the expectation for everyone to attend, I think, is a bit of a stretch when it comes to your schedules as well as expenses. At this time, administration is not planning on attending at this time. There's so many conferences, and as Mr. Kitlitz mentioned, he is attending a conference with a similar subject matter that he'll be bringing back that information to the community, as well as other learning opportunities with regards to most importantly is the EPR. That's essentially what we're really concerned about for our future here. So we're trying to get as educated as possible, and as well. And I know that the the authority also is working towards just that education piece as well, and how we're going to move forward.
You have a follow-up, Councillor Barr?
Yes, thank you, if I may continue. So thank you, that helps out a little bit. So what I'm maybe wondering, and I like that this was brought up, because there's a lot of value in this, I think, but is there a way that we can have something like what we just had with Jasper and our region, able to do something locally that's just a one-day thing that brings us all together, that doesn't cost $15,000, and I know that's on the high end, and I know that most people won't be able to attend this because of the timeline, and there might be some organic or some value in some of the other items, but I know my preference is that extended producer responsibility is important. I don't know if that's something that the West Yellowhead Regional Waste Authority is able to either organize, or unless we do something more local here. I don't know, just a thought.
Well, I think to Councillor Barr's point, as somebody on the Waste Management Authority, and Councillor Pistini's on it with me as well, I think that's one of the reasons we hosted the one in Jasper. Unfortunately, it did not work with people's schedules. I would hope that Alberta Munis is going to have some information sessions as well, which is coming up in the fall. I know not everybody can attend that either. And I think it's important to know, I think it's really important that people get educated on this stuff. But I am, we just had FCM. That's a huge expense. I know a lot of us didn't go to that. Some did. We have AUMA. That's a big expense. So I would suggest that if you haven't gone to any conferences and you're looking at doing one, this would be the one. And maybe some of the folks that have attended some of the other ones maybe hang back just because there is a big expense associated to that. And maybe that'll lead me to, sorry, I'm kind of jumping in here, but to Mr. Lucas, how is our budget in terms of conferences so far this year, and what you're anticipating our budget line to be? Because this is one that we wouldn't normally attend, so it's not budgeted for, but I know that we have not attended a lot of things this year, so there's room in the budget.
Thank you, and through the chair to, I guess, all of council. Just keep in mind these figures are a little bit rough in the sense that there's some forecasting and uncertainties involved around council attendance at Alberta municipalities, as well as other miscellaneous training and conference and other events that may arise. Currently, we're at about 16% utilization for our travel and expense budget at about $8,000. And for our conference registrations, which also includes fees related to not only conference registrations, but our memberships in various external associations. We've used about 57% of that at $17,000. Forecasted with travel and expense to reach about 52% utilization, bringing it up to 72% utilization with if all of council were to attend the RCA conference, as well as Alberta municipalities. For the registrations, forecasted to reach 77% at baseline and 94% utilization if all of council was to attend the RCA conference and full expenses were incurred as per the RFD.
Okay, yeah, and that clarify that's all of council, and that not all of council can attend this. So with that, we will move to the next question. Go ahead, Councillor Moore.
Through the mayor to Daniel. For those not in the know, what exactly is a circular economy?
Oh boy. Good question, Councillor Moore. So I just turn off your mic there. So the circular economy, to put it in, I guess, layman's terms, is taking all the goods that you have, packaging material, and then reusing it again. So everything gets recycled through. So it's a circular economy. Nothing is getting wasted throughout the process of the system. So that's basically what a circular. There's more detail to that, but it's basically reusing everything instead of it ending up in landfills. Which is one of the reasons why EPR is being brought in, which is extended producer responsibility, because that will put the onus, supposed to put the onus on those creating the packaging to be responsible for recycling that packaging or disposing of that packaging. As we've heard from Councillor Byers' report, she went to Jasper. Doesn't look like that's going to be Alberta's program, which is a bit concerning, but which is why we need to attend things like this to get a better, clearer understanding. So, does that answer your question? Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? All right, with that, I will call the question. Please vote now. And that motion is carried unanimously. Can I get a motion, please, that council accept the June 6, 2023 information items as set out in attachments 1, 2, 3 for information? Go ahead, Councillor Chenard.
Okay, I'll make the motion to accept for information.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, I will call the question. Please vote now. And that motion is carried unanimously. We have no sundry reports, council committee reports going back to May the 17th. And today we will start with Councillor Taylor.
Library Board, and I should inform council that the library manager, Michael Baird, has left the library, his position there. He's taken a position in British Columbia, so we wish him well. With that, the board has begun the process of wanting to hire a library director. So spinning off of that, on May 24th, the members of the board and myself met with members of YRL to get some information regarding job description and job ad for the library director. And YRL is extremely helpful in all of this. They did a lot of legwork for us. This is what they do. This is some of our tax dollars at work, and it's paying off. So that went well. On May 30th, I then attended a hiring committee meeting with the library board to discuss sort of the ad and the description and getting it out there. And then we decided that on the same night, to have a finance committee meeting, which sounded like a great idea at the time. But when we hit the 9:30 mark, we realized after 4.5 hours, it may not have been the best idea. But we did some work on our budget for 2024, which still needs to be sort of worked on. On June 5th, which was last night, I attended our youth council meeting, and they are preparing their presentation. I think June 20th is the day they're coming, and it will be, I'm plugging it now, it's going to be the best presentation we've ever had. There it is. It's live. I told the kids that I would say that, so they know, and they're ready. I won't know spoilers. And just earlier today, just had a quick homelessness task force meeting to discuss the future of what we're doing there. So that is my report.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Go ahead, CEO Beveridge.
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Taylor, I'm just curious about the interim manager or director thereof for the library.
That's Trish, and now I've forgotten her last name. She's one of the senior staff that is there. She'll be working as the acting manager in the interim position she has filled before, before Michael was hired. And also Robin, of course, our board chair, will also not be handling management duties, but be there in case of things that need to be dealt with as well. So, thank you. Yes, thank you.
You get that, CEO Beveridge? Okay, thank you. We will go to Councillor Bevan.
I have nothing to report.
Thank you, Councillor Bevan. Councillor Pasichny.
The only thing I have a report on is I attended along with Councillor Moore and Councillor Chenard the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in Toronto from we left on the 24th and returned on the 29th. And which we'll do our report at the Committee of the Whole.
All right, thank you, Councillor Pasichny. And it looks like you brought something back with you.
No, I don't know. Stress of having to hang out with him.
Yeah, you should have got hazard pay, I guess. Let's go to Councillor Beyer.
Thanks. I just have earlier today, June 6th, the Homelessness, Mental Health and Health and Addictions Task Force meeting, as Councillor Taylor mentioned.
All right, thank you. Councillor Chenard.
Okay, my report, as mentioned by Councillor Pasichny, from May 24th to May 29th, FCM. On June 2nd, I attended the TransCanada AGM and meeting, and I forwarded all the notes to council just earlier today, so you get them. So that's it for my report.
Thank you, Councillor Chenard. And the most colorful person at the table, Councillor Moore. As soon as I find your microphone, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Yes, May 19th, I virtually attended the Community Futures meeting, and that's where we always look after new business. And of course, I was at MCM as well with my colleagues. That's it.
I'm glad everybody made it home and nobody was lost. That's good. Good job, Councillor Pasichny. Thank you.
They got no pay for that.
All right, thank you. We have no financial items. Questions for media and public regarding items? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I forgot. homelessness task force meeting today, and that was all I can actually report on. Questions for media and public regarding items from this council meeting? Come on up, Joanne.
Council. I'm Joanne Sobon. Just a couple quick things through the mayor. Who here belongs on either a recycling board or like you're the waste management?
Yes, so with recycling, they're under contract now, so we don't actually have a board position with the Recycling Society. We have a contract with them for them to provide services to our community. And then we have our Waste Management Advisory, was it West Yellowhead Regional Waste Management Authority, which Councillor Pasichny and I sit on, and it manages the Hinton landfill, which all the municipalities in the region operate.
Okay. I'm glad to see that you asked to scale back on that conference if you could. That was for a member of the public, that was a huge, like you look at 15,000, and I understand that not everybody can go and stuff like that, and I totally agree with what Councillor Byer said, if there's something that on a smaller scale. I mean, really, a circular economy is reuse, reduce, recycle. It's like, I mean, it's not a new concept. My opinion as a member from the public. So thank you for suggesting that.
Go ahead, Councillor Pasichny. Go ahead.
Yeah, through the mayor to Joanne. The blanket is so that anybody, one person can attend, because the way the schedules work on our council, not everybody could attend anyway. So I think it could have been worded better that, you know, those who can attend would be able to attend, as opposed to everybody attending, because we haven't even been getting everybody to our big conferences, which we're supposed to attend. So.
Okay, good to know, just from the public end. But for the suggestion that obviously it's like take due care and consideration, and I appreciate that as a member of the public, for sure.
Yeah.
Just with regards to through the mayor, to the citizen budget survey results, the numbers were way down, which is really disappointing to me. I mean, I was just beating that thing to death constantly. Do we have to have a mandatory 3-week thing on that, or could we not have extended it for a week or two because of the wildfires, or?
So I think to that question, I think we have a schedule of when things need to occur. The budgetary process is very long, so we need to get these results in as soon as we can, because now our departments and our external organizations are going to start forming their budgets, so they can reflect on that. And then then it's going to come to council, and then there's going to be all these processes, so we can get this approved by the fall. So if you extend that out, then everything else gets extended down the road. So I don't know if CO Beveridge, if you have, or Ms. Bittner, if you want to jump in on any comments on that. There's always those opportunities to extend. But we also just received the results from our 2022 budget survey as well, not that long ago, as you're aware. So taking that all into account, and I think some of the results are pretty similar.
Mr. Mayor, through to Ms. Press it. Okay. There we go. Mr. Mayor, through to Ms. Sobon. So we definitely did speak about, obviously the welfare was unprecedented. We were trying to ensure that getting back to normal operations, making sure that we were hitting our targets, as Mr. Mayor mentioned. It's very important to us that we, in working through our budget process, that we stick with our, if we can, stick with our timelines and ensure that the feedback that is provided is used at the right time, if you will. So if we're hitting a point where we're hitting the end of our council meeting sessions very soon, and we have our budgets due in June 30th, actually, from our managers. So having that information into us for our managers to have consideration for the budgets as well, and for council to be able to review, that was pretty critical. Now, obviously, we understand that, you know, there probably could have been, and maybe in future we'll look at that, but from last year to this year, we have moved our budget process dramatically up in order to have further, more comprehensive review of the budget process, and actually a more intensive look at it. So we've added a lot of things this year. We're pretty aggressive with this. And so in order to incorporate all the changes, we really did have to stick to it. So I do thank you very much for your feedback, and I do apologize for, obviously making the call, but we had to make a call with this at the time that we did.
Thank you. Through the mayor, I appreciate your intensive looking at the budget. I'm good with that, so I'll be all right with that. It's just suggestions going on through the CAO. I don't, like, some of the questions are very, very general, and I understand that you can't, I don't know how specific.
So I sorry, I have to jump in here. This is question period.
Okay.
If you do have some feedback,
Okay.
maybe either after the meeting or send us an email
Okay.
or a discussion afterwards. I just, part of our meeting procedure bylaw, this is just a question, questions on things on the agenda, not necessarily to provide feedback. So
Okay.
feel free to provide that feedback. We definitely want to hear that.
Should I
just,
call you or email you? Which is the best?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, that's everything.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Joanne. Do we have any media? Okay, thank you. We will move to a closed meeting session. Who wants to make that motion? Councillor Byer, go ahead.
I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Byer. I will call the question. Please vote now.
Try abstaining from it.
I was gonna try abstaining from it.
All right, that motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, so Councillor Chenard, can I get a motion for you for extension of the meeting?
I'll make the motion to extend the time of the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Chenard. All those in favor? Are we just raising our hands?
That may be simplest.
Yes, okay. All those in favor? That motion's carried. Can I get a motion to go back into in-camera? Councillor Taylor, all those in favor? Motion carried. All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We have a few motions coming out in camera. So can I get a motion, please, that council appoint the following Family and Community Support Services Advisory Board members effective?
She said something about we have to appoint the council member first.
No, just let me chair the meeting. Can I get a motion, please, that council appoint the following Family and Community Support Services Advisory Board members effective immediately, as outlined in the text below? Councillor Taylor, would you like to make that motion?
I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Any questions, comments, or concerns? If not, please vote now. All right, and that motion is carried unanimously. Can I get a motion, please, to appoint Councillor Peter Taylor to the FCSS Advisory Board meeting until the next organizational meeting? Councillor Moore will make that motion.
I shall move.
All right, any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, I will call the question. Please vote now. All right, and that motion is carried unanimously, and I think Councillor Byer, you have another motion you would like to make.
Yes. I would like to make a motion to allow Mayor Zahara to authorize adjustments to CAO Beverages contract as per the details discussed in camera.
We'll just give Danielle a few moments to prepare that.
No, we got a form she can cancel.
Yep.
We should be like SCN and start
Yes. Zahara's has a red line on me. Can we change that, please?
All right, so that's the motion. Everybody sees it there. I will call the question. Please vote now. And that motion is carried unanimously. And our favorite motion of the night, a motion for adjournment. Councillor Chenard. Why did you turn off your microphone? Councillor Chenard, would you like to make that motion?
Yes, I'll make the motion for adjournment.
Thank you, Councillor Chenard. All those in favor, please vote now. It didn't come for me. We're going to redo this vote.
21st century technology with 17th century voting methods.
There we go. Now it popped up for me.
We can't even adjourn a meeting.
We
We're here for another hour, so adjourn.
Holy Jesus. Ed, you should have voted with them.
And that motion is carried 5-2. I just want to see if the button worked. Have a good night.
We got to be very careful.